I think the productivity puzzle we have in the UK, and I think it's real. The OECD, of course, say that we're about 7th out of the G7 on productivity per capita, and economists kind of differ about how you measure it. But no matter what, we're not doing as good as we could do. And I think the reasons we're not is not the reasons perhaps governments in the past have said we are. So they have said, we don't have the up-to-date equipment, we don't have great technology, as good technology as our competitors, and we'd be more productive if we did. I disagree with them. I think in a way, in terms of IT use, for example, we're one of the leading countries in the world per capita in terms of IT nous and usage. So I don't think it's that, and I think in most sectors we have probably the up-to-date equipment. In some sectors we don't. I don't think it's that. I think it's about how people are managed. I think people are just managed poorly. We don't have as many socially skilled managers that we need. We need more socially, interpersonally skilled with what some people are calling the soft skills. I think what we have done is selected people on the basis of what they deliver to the bottom line rather than how they manage human beings. Because ultimately, if you manage people properly, they'll be motivated, they'll be much more productive. So that's one element of it. I think the other element is the opposite of what governments and some commentators have said, is we have almost too much IT. You know, that I think another factor here, if we have one of the highest usages in the developed world of emails and all these kinds of CIT technologies, what's happening is we're not managing that technology, it's managing us. Our emails, our copying in people, are not prioritizing the emails. None of us are trained to manage emails, for example. Where do we get the training to do that? And so what I think is ending up happening is people are cottoning on to the idea that actually we are delivering less because we're spending more time dealing with our emails and other forms of social media than we are actually getting the job done. So you traditionally, when I see somebody and I'll say to them, what'd you do today? And they'll say, oh, I had a great day today. I did all my emails. I said, no, I didn't say that. I said, what did you do today? Yeah, I did all my emails. So the point is, that individual thinks that work is doing emails. It's a vehicle to an end. It's a means. It's not an end in and of itself. What's an end is a product, a service, a new idea, a new concept, a new this, that, and the other. It is not doing emails. So I think we do have a problem, and it's being addressed actually in the sense that companies are now doing things like some companies shutting off their server at the weekend. We have many organizations now saying that you don't do emails, send emails to anybody in the same building. I mean, obviously, if it's the Shard, it's a different matter. But let's say it's an average building. It's best to do face-to-face because you build teams up that way and so on. So I think we have people really looking at this, and of course, Atos is trying to have an email-free company, and they're on their road to doing it. So these are the kind of issues I think important. How we manage human beings in the workplace. We need more socially, interpersonally skilled people doing that. We need to manage the technology rather than get any more of it. We have quite enough of the technology, and obviously we have to keep up to date. But let's learn how to manage the technology. And I think I think another one is our long working hours culture. I think that's a killer. I think we have the longest working hours in Europe, the second longest in the developed world behind the United States. This is doing us damage. There's no evidence shows if you consistently work long hours, you're more productive. We do know if you consistently work long hours from the research evidence, you will get ill. I mean, I think there's a range of things we can do to kind of control email. Okay, so one of them is obviously to ensure that you don't send emails within the same building, because it's important we have face-to-face interaction. So no sending of emails. You can send files, but then you have to go see the person face-to-face. That does several things. Number one, it means that there are going to be clear communications because you're going to be talking to a human being. eyeball to eyeball. You can get their nonverbal forms of communication, everything that's better that way. Sending them files, fine, but then, and you also team build, so that's one. Also, I think you can have guidelines. Many companies say, you know, unless it's urgent, don't do it at night and don't do it at the weekends. You know, don't access your emails. Well, that's fine, right? But there's something called a mobile phone. And with a mobile phone, you know, well, let me just take a look at this. Go out for dinner any night in any restaurant, and you look at a family, and you'll see they're all sitting there looking at their knees as they're each texting, emailing, or whatever. It is not healthy for us to be doing that. So I think you can have guidelines, I think. And a third thing you can do, I think it's the most extreme you can do, is shut off the server at night and shut off the server at the weekend. But what I really think is important, the fourth thing is, and it's something we should be doing training on, we should have certain no's. One no is no copying in anybody else other than the person you have to deal with. So forget that. And effectively why we do that is to protect our backside, in a sense. What we're doing there is to politically make sure that everybody knows what we've said, even if they're not directly involved in it, particularly the boss and the boss's boss and all that. And it's not necessary to do that. So controlling, making a number of points about how we can control it. So no CCing in, prioritizing every email. So you send an email to people and you say, this is urgent. This has to be dealt with in the next 24 hours. So you maybe have a categorization system, 1, 2, 3, 4 means one, and we should send that to a receiver, right? The other thing is I don't think we should just deal with emails as they come in. Here's the irony. Funny enough, what I tend to do is I tend to print off all my emails, and I do it as if I'm getting a letter. So I put them in piles and say, these are urgent and everything else. So in other words, we gotta learn how to prioritize what's coming in, because it's so much that we have to deal with that. So I think if you did some of those things, and maybe we just need training on how to control it, and we need training on how to shut it off, right? There is a little button on a mobile phone, right? You can, at night, or when you're out for dinner with your family, or you're on holiday, press the button off. Don't turn it on. If you feel that insecure, you ought to ask yourself the question, why I'm insecure enough that I need to access it so often while I'm on holiday, right? Because I think there's a kind of issue there. But there's a whole range of things we can do, and we need more innovative ideas. And I think like Atos, trying to find platforms, for example, where people can talk more face-to-face over a computer and not just send emails, which are bad from several points of view. Number one, it's an email overload. You know, it's just so many, and you might miss the really important things to do. But also, emails are not the most efficient way of communicating, and you may miscommunicate something to somebody else they take offense at. Difficult conversations should never be done by email. You know, job loss, change of role, anything significant should always be done face to face. And that should be company policy, because too many people are getting information about the fact there's going to be 10% redundancies, there's going to be restructuring, your department is kind of problematic, or even indeed worse than that, you've been selected to go. I mean, we really just have to learn how to control it. I'll tell you, there's another thing that kind of troubles me about emails and social media in general, but emails in particular. So you go into a meeting, and a lot of people have iPads, so they're sitting with their iPad, and you actually think that they're actually taking notes on what you're saying, but actually what they're doing is their emails. I see that with students, by the way. It's everywhere, and I think we should ban that. There's always somebody who takes the notes anyway at a meeting. Let them take the notes, and you just put down your iPhone, your smartphone, or your iPads, or any other paraphernalia, and actually listen to other people. So that's one I'm kind of worried about. I'm seeing that happening more. For example, at conferences, whether it's a business conference, academic conference, any kind of conference, people are on their iPads or their laptops. And you think they're actually taking notes about what you're saying, and they're not, and they're doing their emails. And actually, the speakers know that. We just do. Any speaker knows that. And that's just not good. It's not good in meetings, conferences, or anywhere else. So it's another area I think we need to kind of control. We need more interaction between people. And any vehicle to get interaction at meetings, interaction between colleagues in offices, you should never send an email to somebody sitting 20 feet away. That's crazy stuff. That is not what work should be about. I guess social media is another kind of problematic area. You can easily get hooked on Twitter, no question about it, for example, or Facebook. And by the way, businesses encourage it. So businesses encourage people to get on Facebook, to market themselves that way, to be on Twitter and market themselves. But these are very infectious, addictive technologies. And I get worried about that, you know. I mean, I do Twitter myself, and I know how you can get hooked on it. And I try to tend to do it when I'm traveling, so I'm not, but say you're doing it at work, and it takes you away from work, doesn't it? So if you're sitting on Twitter, or you're doing Facebook, even if it's work-related, by the way, it's not always work-related, which is another factor. So that's a kind of productivity issue. Are people using social media, even with the acceptance of their company, with the encouragement of their company, indeed, you know, because now I have 5,000 followers, and you have Facebook with this, that, and the other. But there's a lot of that, and it's not to do with your work. And even if it's to do with your work, it becomes too addictive, and really addictive. And so we have to control that. By the way, I think people actually think that the higher up they go on the number of followers, for example, that they have, whether it's LinkedIn or Twitter and everything else, they think that will give them brownie points with their employer. And some of that has nothing to do with work. I think HR has a big role in the controlling of emails and social media. Really important. By controlling, I don't mean Big Brother. I mean, let's train people on how to use it, what's the appropriate use of it, how much time is it taking. You know, there have been lots of companies have said that people have, you know, spend 3 or 4 hours a day on emails that don't actually contribute to the bottom line. And I suspect, I don't know how many more hours you'd throw in social media. So how many hours a day are they doing actual productive work on a product, on a service, on thinking through a future development? I think we don't spend much time doing that, and I think that's the worry. So HR's got a critical role, I think, in using it. It looks like it's a kind of trivial issue. Oh, it's only emails and, you know, Twitter and Facebook and all that, but it's not just that. It's about how do you team build if people are looking at machines all the time or looking at their iPhones? We need really to do some work in this arena in a very systematic way, and not just guidelines. It's got to be training and everything else. Maybe we should do that with people who first come into the business. Maybe the people who have been there a while are not trainable anymore because they're so addicted to it all. Maybe as new people come in, we have to really train them up from start as a part of the onboarding. Part of the onboarding is this is the no-nos on the use of email. We don't want you using it when you're on holiday. We don't want you doing it. Don't CC people in. All the things we've been talking about, I think, are quite important from an onboarding training experience. Another area, I think, that drains our productivity is meetings. We spend an inordinate amount of time in meetings. And by the way, who trains chairpersons in a meeting? Nobody. You're a senior person, so you're the chair, right? Do we train that senior person to manage a meeting? No, we do not. Why don't we? It takes up so many hours a week. If we had good chairs, the meetings would be shorter, focused, timed, we'd be much more productive. So isn't it an irony that if you go to most of the business schools and you look at the MBA programs or the undergraduate management programs, is there anything in there about how you manage a meeting? No. It's all knowledge-based. It's not practice-based. It's not managing people, which, by the way, is a problem I think we have in business schools, speaking as a business school academic, that what I think we don't do is we don't train the future managers, whether it's undergraduate management courses or MBAs or any other form of program like that. We don't train them on how to manage people. What we do is give them knowledge about HR, marketing, economics, knowledge, not skills. So where do we learn the skills? We learn it on the job. And we don't do the right thing. So you have a group of people who are going to have a meeting. It's always a senior person who chairs it, even if though the senior person may not have the social skills to chair a meeting. Why do we do that? Why aren't we finding the best chair could be one of his subordinates chairs it? Because you know what? That person has really good social interpersonal skills. Could do it. Or alternatively, we train all managers on how to do meetings. You know, people think that HR professionals would do the good practice. You know, they would do best practice. They would themselves follow their guidelines on email usage, social media, managing meetings. My experience is they don't. They're like everybody else, you know. Are they trained to run a meeting? Are they trained how to manage their own emails? Because probably they get even more emails than most other people would get, given that many of the problems in the work environment are people problems. So I think that, you know, they don't exactly practice the guidelines that they tend to create. And we need to do something about that. Maybe they would be the good exemplar. Maybe HR professionals should be the people who do the business on all these issues. And if we look at HR professionals, okay, say they managed emails better, meetings better, social media better, more face-to-face, less email conversations and the like, they'd probably do better. This is a productivity issue again. They would do better at planning strategic HR rather than personnel stuff. And I think that is, just like everybody else, their job is to do strategic HR, really, or should be. Of course, they have to do practical things as well. You know, they have to onboard, they have to deal with redundancies, they have to deal with organizational restructuring, all those kinds of issues, talent management, and so on. But if they didn't have all these other distractions like every other manager does, and every other professional in the organization, they can get on more with the strategic things, which would make them more productive and would fulfill the role they're supposed to be playing. I think the biggest strain I have is really the media, social media, definitely emails. You know, I'm pretty good at what I do. I mean, I try to do it I do prioritize my emails now, but I don't know what's going to be important. So that's the problem, because somebody sends me an email, I don't know, I know that person's sending, but I haven't read it yet, so I have to open it to find out that this is important. And so if we had that kind of scheme going, I think it would be great. And I think social media too, because in lots of roles I kind of play an external relations role. So I feel I should be doing more social media than I probably should. I try to stay away from Facebook, but I do tweet quite a bit, and probably, as my family say, too much.